All right, let's continue. Got my laptop plugged back in. All right, so we've got our Photoshop document here. One thing that Windows does by default is it doesn't show you the extension of the file. I don't really love this because it kind of would be useful for people to see that. But we can turn that on if we go to View, go to Show, and go to File Name Extensions. So a file name extension just tells you what type of file it is. And this helps us know what kind of file we're using. And it also helps the computer know how to render a file, how to display an image or play audio or play video or something like that. So we just want to turn that on, and we can see that this is a PSD file. We can also see the size of the file over here. It's 181 kilobytes. That's not a huge file by today's standards, but it's something that we will continue to keep track of as our file sizes. So as we add more stuff in here, that number will increase. And kilobytes are 1,000 bytes, so it's a lot of bytes. I'll talk a little bit more about file sizes in the next video, actually. So let's go back over to Photoshop. I'm just gonna minimize this. And now that we've saved it, you can see the name of the document there, and you can see that that asterisk is gone. So if I make a change, like if I do that, you'll see that asterisk is back. That means that the file's not saved. So it's just a little indicator to let you know that you have changes that you've made that aren't saved. So you don't want to quit the program without making those changes. I'm gonna hit Control S to save it again, and now we're good. So let's add some more stuff in here. I've got my little rectangle, and you can see if I make another rectangle, it's gonna just automatically make another layer for me. So that, is a good feature because now we can kind of work with our rectangles separately. If I wanna work with one rectangle, I don't have to work, it's not gonna change the other rectangle. So Photoshop will kind of make layers for you as you add stuff in here. When you're editing, if I click over here, as long as I have the rectangle tool selected, it can only either make rectangles or edit existing rectangles. So I can, edit a rectangle that I just created. Once I've made the rectangle, what I want to do is switch back to this selection tool or to the move tool over here. The move tool shortcut is V. The selection tool shortcut is A. So if you just hit V on the keyboard, you can move. If you hit A, you can select. They kind of do similar things, but there's different contexts where you want to use them. So let's put the shape over here. I'm going to make kind of a little composition. Notice that it's going to keep the dimensions of the rectangle once I create it. If I want to make it a different size, I have to hold Shift, and it'll let me do that. So I've got some cool overlapping rectangles. I'm just going to try to make sort of an interesting visual composition. I'm just going to play with some different shapes and play with some colors and kind of see what happens. So let's change the color of this rectangle. So what I want to do is click on here and look at the appearance. So since I have the move tool selected, you don't see the color options up here, but they're still over here. If I go back to the select tool, then you will see them. So you have to, it takes a little while to get used to. Sometimes it's kind of confusing what options are available when, but it's just the context of what you have selected. So let's change the fill of this. Let's maybe do like an orangey yellow color, make something a little bit different, some nice contrast. So that's kind of cool. So we've got a couple different rectangles starting to make sort of an interesting composition. Let's rename these layers. So if I double click on this layer, I can write whatever I want here. So I'm going to call this blue rectangle, or rect for short, and I'll call this yellow rect. This just makes it a little bit easier to know what I'm looking at when I look at my layers. So I can kind of turn these on and off and see how it affects things. If I have the selection tool, if I select outside of my stuff, it'll just deselect things. If I double click in my shapes, it will sometimes select them. Like I can select this yellow one. I can't select this blue one, maybe because it's down here. Let's see if I do this. Yeah, sometimes it's hard Photoshop is not always gonna let you select stuff. I do think the order kind of matters, but you can always just click on these boxes in the layers to select different things and make edits to them. So you can change the size, change the color, do different stuff like that. Let's play around with these even more. So a couple other things you can do with the layers. Notice there's this opacity setting here. And if I set this opacity down, it becomes see-through. So that's an interesting way to combine some colors and shapes. There's also this thing called the blend mode. This is where I like to have a lot of fun, is this blend mode. If you look at the blend mode, notice that it combines the two layers in different ways. It kind of takes the two colors and adds them together in different ways. So if we just do like a straight up multiply, it takes that yellow and the blue. Let's turn off the grid for just a second. Oh, my key command is not working. There we go. Okay. So now let's go back. So if I go here and let's go to multiply. So it multiplies the yellow value by the blue value, and it gives me this kind of interesting green color. But we can also do like difference. That gives me kind of a cool purple color. That's the difference between the two colors. But it also changes the yellow now. So these things do kind of different things depending on what the math says to do. So let's find a good one. Let's see. I like multiply. I kind of like darken as well. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm going to go with multiply. I think that's kind of interesting. You don't have to do this, but it might be an interesting way to combine colors. You know, I could just make a different rectangle with that color and put it in there. But let's see if I can come up with other interesting ways to play with this composition. So another thing that you can do with your layers is you can put them into a group. So if I select this yellow rectangle, and I hold shift and select the blue rectangle, and I click this folder, I get this group. And the cool thing about that is I can move the layers around separately, but I can also select the group itself, and then I can move the whole thing, although it's not letting me do that. Okay, so now it is. So I can, you know, resize the group. I can rotate it. I can do different stuff with this. So that can give me some other options for how to kind of play with my composition. So if I select the group, and then I can kind of play with, you know, the position. Although every time I do that, it changes. If I select the group, okay, if I select the group, I can do this easily. How come I can't move the whole group? Maybe if I do that, I can move it. Anyway, another thing I can do here is I can duplicate this entire group. So let's go to duplicate group, and I'll just call this group 2. Okay, so now notice that the colors are getting added together even more, but I can take this second group and I can, you know, kind of like layer it on top of this other group. Now I'm starting to get kind of an interesting composition here. So look at that. Now that's kind of cool. So we've got our blue section, we've got this yellow section, now we've got this green section. So that's pretty interesting. So we can start to kind of combine different stuff and kind of make different parts of our composition. Maybe I'll do that a couple more times. So I'll take this group and I'll duplicate it again. Let's call this group 3. And what if I move this up here? And yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so that has kind of a separate combination. Or no, did I only move? Okay, let me make sure. I think I only moved part of that group. Okay, so let's make sure we're moving both of these guys. Let's move it up here and maybe do like that. Maybe I can turn it around. Something like that. That's kind of interesting. Let's see. I'm not sure I like that. Another thing to mention, when I'm making these kind of transforms, if you can't leave this, sometimes it gets you kind of stuck in here. What you have to do is just hit enter, and it'll let you leave it. Okay, so now I've got this other group up here, but what do I want to do with these guys? I'm going to hit Control Z a couple times. You can also always go back to your history. You can see the whole history here. So if I go back through my history, I can see all these different things that I've done. Okay, so I don't really like this overlap. Let's turn the grid back on, and let's make sure that these guys line up. Okay. It gets a little harder to know what you're editing once you have more stuff in there. Okay. I don't think I like this. Let's delete this group. Let's get rid of this. Let's delete the group and the contents. I was kind of happier with what I had before, but this is kind of a good start. I've been going for a while, so I'm not going to spend too much more time just kind of playing with things. I just wanted to show you guys a few basic things. When you start to work on your project, so I want you to just create an abstract composition. Just come up with something that you think looks interesting, just a combination of shape and color. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't have to have tons of shapes, but I just want you to focus on using some basic shapes, using some basic colors, and creating kind of an interesting combination of shapes and colors that gives you kind of a cool pattern, or something interesting that you can just make with simple stuff. There's lots of other shapes you can make. You can make circles. You can make triangles. You can make what else is in here? Polygons. If you make a polygon, one thing to note is that there's an extra little icon in the polygon. Where is it? That still has the rounded corners, but there's an extra, maybe I'm thinking of Illustrator. I guess I don't see it here, but what it does have, if we select the polygon, it's somewhere. Okay, let's look down here. Oh, it's right here. So if you go down to appearance in here, you can change how many sides it has. So the lowest is going to be 3. You can go up, do different numbers of sides. There's also lines and custom shapes. You don't have to use stuff that's really complicated. I'm just going to delete these things. But you would just want to make something that kind of looks interesting, use some cool colors, use some cool shapes. Don't go too crazy, just make something that you like, that kind of looks visually interesting. And we just want to kind of get started just using the software. We don't want to go too crazy. We'll go over a lot of other tools and other stuff that you can do with Photoshop next week. But for now, I want to keep it kind of simple, just leave it there. So I'm going to save this composition. I'm going to make one more video where I talk about exporting this as an image so that you can publish it and share it with people. And after that, I'll show you how to publish it on the Open Lab so that we'll be able to all view it in class and submit it for our first assignment. So there's a lot to cover in the first week. There's a lot of probably new concepts, new terminology, new approaches. So if it's a little bit, intimidating, don't worry about it. You'll get used to it. In subsequent weeks, we're gonna, not cover quite as much because we'll just be focusing on specific tools and things like that. So it will get a little bit simpler. Anyway, I'm gonna stop here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.